the mountains might flow down at thy presence, as when the melting fire burneth, the fire causes the waters to boil. To make thy name known to thine adversaries, that the nations may tremble at thy presence, when thou didst terrible things which we look not for. Thou camest down the mountains, flow down at thy presence. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, O God, beside thee, what he hath prepared for him that waiteth for him. Thou meetest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in Proverbs, of course, chapter 13. We're going to pick up at verse 15. Oh, wait, that's right. I was using my notepad to do a lot of things. Yes, this is Notepad. What is that program you use to make the words go by, Paul? It's Notepad. All right. So, Proverbs 13, verse 15. Good understanding giveth favor, but the way of transgressors is hard. Every prudent man dealeth with knowledge, but a fool layeth open his folly. A wicked messenger falleth into mischief, but a faithful ambassador is health. Poverty and shame shall be to him that refuseth instruction, but he that regardeth reproof shall be honored. The desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but it is abomination to fools to depart from evil. Oh, one moment. I'm sorry, thank you. Sorry. I'm finding myself slightly strangled there. But let's just do verse 19 over again. The desire is accomplished. I'm sorry. The desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but it is abomination to fools to depart from evil. He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Much food is in the tillage of the poor, but there is that is destroyed for want of judgment. That's one of those places where I would probably do a double that in English and put it in italics in the King James, because that, even though I know a double, I don't know if it's against the elements of style or something, but sometimes it sounds better to say, but there is that is destroyed for want of judgment. But what they want is, there is that is destroyed for want of judgment. There is that is destroyed. That is destroyed is one thing, probably. Oh, that's probably the problem. We don't have a word for that in English. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. The righteous eateth to the satisfying of his soul, but the belly of the wicked shall want. And we will do well if we get to the end of the chapter. Okay, well, yeah, whatever. That was just a reading point. That wasn't really a commentary, what I said there. All right, so let's look at this. Good understanding giveth favor, but the way of transgressors is hard. You know, they say, I don't want to start like that, but sometimes people will tell you the right way to do things, right? And it may not be obvious, right? But it's not obviously wrong. But some people just, they don't take instruction. They don't understand. You know, I mean, it's like, it's hard to tell some people because they don't want to hear. But favor, I'm assuming to be something like grace. And let's look at that real quick. Or a word that would be somehow comparable to the idea of grace. Because, and let's just look at, let's see. Go right there. Okay. Verse 13, 15. Giveth favor. Cain, which is the word for grace or favor in Hebrew. I said, it says chemes. Actually, chen. At least that's what this looks like to me. Actually, because that's the letter. You read from right to left, and that thing is the thing that makes that noise. From Hanan. I like to do that because I grew up around German speakers, and I did take a couple of years of that in high school. And they also have that das Buch, and all that. All right. And I'm exaggerating, of course. It's good to do it subtly, otherwise you become an obnoxious speaker of such things. And that's why it's kind of a gag too, right? Because that noise is a funny thing to have in your language. All right, good understanding giveth favor. And what was understanding and good and all that? Let's see here. Maybe not gotta go that deep, but let's see. Good, understand. Good being tob, the usual for beauty or good. Prudence, insight, yeah. And of course, yeah, it's like my original Bible teacher, the first guy I seriously listened to teaching the Bible, used to say, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And in a sense, yeah, having good, what is this? Understanding sekel, prudence or insight. Yeah. Prudent people gain favor with men. And, it says of Jesus, he grew in favor with God and men. Insight and prudence, people like it. And yes, it gains you favor. And people will make your way plainer. I always thought that was important in educating my kids, is to not just instill education on them, but to make them understand the basis for which I would tell them things. So, one of the themes I would put on this study is he that spares the rod hates his son. Right? The semi-final verse of this collection here, this chapter. Right? And so I want my children to have good understanding. I want them to be insightful and prudent in a way that's beautiful and good. And that, gives them favor with God and men. Right? And so that's going to involve them not becoming transgressors. And so, one of the in the area of treachery for some people is their pig-headed lack of understanding as parents as to how to execute this. Because unfortunately, in our world, we have a lot of people of no understanding running around telling people that the Bible is full of, stupid things that don't make any sense and blah, blah, blah. It's all nonsense. It's so weird because, it's like, I know they haven't read the whole thing. They'll pick on little parts. And I'm like, you gotta understand, this book was written over centuries by dozens and dozens of people. It contains a lot of stuff. It's like, you have to use it with understanding. You can't be so simple-minded in all things. In certain things we are simple. In other things, not so simple, because that's the essence of what wisdom is. And so, look at some punishments require you spare not the rod. But that doesn't mean you never spare the rod. Let me tell you that. Because if you use it, and also the rod has to be used when the rod is warranted. That's another thing. You have to set the bar properly. You don't give someone 40 stripes for a very minor infraction, right? And so that was always a thing in the law. The punishment should fit the crime. That's what the essence of eye for an eye is. That's why I didn't give my children the belt for things that were lesser than things like lying and certain violence towards their siblings. Uh, Anytime I detected hatred or animosity, they had to work out their problems. Was maybe not belt worthy, but it was something I was pushing towards, and so that's why obviously, violence towards your. And I told him, and we wrestled each other, so we know the difference, And anyways, so certain things were worthy of a belt. Things on a certain level of transgression when they're of a certain age. When they're small, there's all kinds of little ways to discipline them. But once they can understand, you move into things that have to do with understanding and punishment. And yeah, if you transgress against good ideas and right the things that are conducive to a favorable life with God and men, it's going to be hard for you. That's going to be difficult. And I don't want life to be difficult for my children. That's something I definitely do not want. And that's why, as I see them come into adulthood, I realized I didn't know this going into it. I'm like, but one of the best things I did for them was to help them understand, was to, one, discipline them in such a way that none of them became resentful. And none of them became rebellious or were spoiled from not being punished. Somehow I got it about right. I made mistakes, but also I own those mistakes. Like if ever I punish someone, and I've talked about that in the past, where I accidentally punished a kid who didn't deserve it, and I apologized to him and told him I thought this and that, and every one of my kids justified me and said, "Well, you thought this, and it was necessary, and he wasn't talking, and you had to do something, and they thought it was right." And like it says in other places, and he didn't die. One swipe of the rod, so to speak. I've never used a rod. Some people do prefer it. They prefer a switch or something. It might be less stingy. I don't know. Well, I've always used a belt. Dad wears a belt. I say, I bear not the belt in vain. My loins are girt with truth. And then the truth smites, and it has a pain of its own when you're wrong. When you're a transgressor, it's hard. But one of the things it warns in the New Testament is provoke not your children to wrath. And I tell you, you transgress, you overpunish, you overcorrect them. You use that rod in an inappropriate time. Like I said, I saw this family in the on TV back in the 80s on some spanking and corporal punishment. Of course, they choose the worst possible example of a family just overly correcting their children. And anyone who's grown up in a house like that, I'm sure they'll tell you, they resent it. And they grow up and it doesn't work. And it makes them just hate their parents and not want to do what they tell them. And I don't say it much now because I don't like to, because my children are adults. But when they were little, I used to say, I want my children to adore me and to be terrified of me. Simultaneously in close to equal measures. I'm not care which one is a little bit more than the other, I guess. I'm not sure it matters. As long as they see it as balanced. I mean, as long as the results are, they come out with good understanding and have favor with men. And I see that when my children go out into public, they are favored. Not because they're special, but because they have they're good and insightful. Their minds are ready. They are quick with their hands and to work and slow to complain or other BS. It didn't take long for me to get to profanity, did it? Anyways, so and that's the goal. I don't want my children to have a hard way. And if I find myself correcting my child a lot, I don't know. I didn't have a huge variety of children. I had 8, and they were mostly boys, 7 out of 8. And we always thought, they weren't all the same temperament, that's for sure. We had some different temperaments, and, I don't know. It's not like I never had any pushback or anything like that. But I do, they had a good, I've never had a truly, this whole black sheep theory. I'm not sure how much I buy into it. But, I mean, there is, everyone, we all succumb to temptation in different ways. And I suppose some of us has a greater potential for evil and maybe even for good, Because you think about Paul, what a great sinner he was, the apostle, and how that the great evil he was doing was turned into a great good. Not that the evil he had done was turned to good, but the gift and the calling of God, which was in him, the powers which God had invested in his human frame, just the earthly power of his mind and all that was turned to the Lord's use. And so I don't know, I've never tried adopting or things like that, and stepkids, and I've often said, I don't know how to do this except from the ground up. I got good results, but also I was mindful when I married another believer. We were prayerful the whole time. I can't imagine a pair of Christian adults, you're together and you're raising this child and children and whatever, and trying to do your best and doing the right way, and you're together working in agreement and genuine commitment to the Lord. I can't imagine you're going to end up with these these rebellious children that just don't listen and da. I just don't see, how does that work? I thought if it was even one believing spouse could sanctify the children according to the New Testament, right? If you else your children were unclean, Paul said, and I can only assume that has something to do with, like I've always believed, as is true of me. I was born into the faith. That doesn't mean I don't have to actually, I was automatically saved from my youth, but it's like being born Jewish, being born Christian, meaning as far as what Paul said, having the advantages thereof. To them were committed the oracles of God. I grew up with a children's Bible next to my bed. It's a very distorted view of things, but not entirely. I mean, the stories were the stories. They conveyed a lot of the essential parts of the story, certainly enough to infect my mind. It's funny because the things that people often get upset about those old books, there was mine had a very prominent, close cropped hair, not close cropped, but neck length hair. Jesus, very clearly blonde, which I thought and blue eyed. Though I know he was described as blue eyed, but not blonde haired. Sorry. I don't know what color eyes, whatever. I think to me that's just a mutation anyways. We get all caught up. Okay. Let's get to the next proverb. So every prudent man dealeth with knowledge, but a fool layeth open his folly. I'll just check that word dealeth, because the good understanding gives, okay, the prudent man dealeth with knowledge. We're going to have to look at that. I'm going to look at the two verbs in comparison. So we have, that's grace, and that is the one for prudence. So to do or make, okay, great. Okay, yeah, that's fine. And then to spread out, okay. So he deals with knowledge. Okay, it's in the sense of to make or accomplish or to create. I guess you might, let's look at this. See, what do they get in the variety of applications? To do or make. Nah, I don't know. I wish I could tell you more. You see, there's a lot. It looks like a basic word that gets used in a lot of different contexts, like to acquire property, to appoint priests, to observe, celebrate a religious festival, to attend to or put in order, to make offering, to make offering, not to make offering, but to make. You see the word make in italics there. That's the reverse of the way it is used in the King James. Is to prepare, to produce. That's what he works with, so to speak. I mean, it's like the thing that he's, you makes an offering. He works with knowledge. He makes with knowledge. He prepares with knowledge, right? That's the basic idea. This is to spread out, to chop, disperse, display, extend. Let's see, King James. I mean the Strong. Break, chop in pieces, lay open. A primitive verb to break apart, disperse. So you have making and then the idea of unmaking, right? Yeah, and see that definitely does not quite see that was good to look at those verbs, because the idea of laying open, yeah, I get it. Like you might lay open an enemy or a city. Like, you shouldn't use a euphemism for something like this. Yeah, he spreads abroad, or not spreads abroad, but it's more like, what was it? Disperses his folly. But it has an implication of to break, chop in pieces, lay open, to spread out, to spread out. See, make has this idea of putting things together, right? And this other word seems to be a kind of an opposite word of taking things apart, is the way I see it here. So that, his folly. So his folly is something that, like his works, are not put together right. They're not made correctly, in the sense of, like, to be useful, to be beautiful, to edify. But every prudent man what is prudent again? It's probably the same word as in understanding. That's my stab in the dark, okay? Prudent is arun, not at all. It's a different word. It's arum, which is crafty, shrewd, sensible. So depending on what the context is, right? Because it could refer to someone as being negatively crafty or positively. It just depends. So cunning, usually in a bad sense. Here it says in strong, but obviously not here. See, it can be subtle or cunning. I bet is that the serpent was subtle, more subtle than any other creature of the field? Let's see. Oh, look, it was. The serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. That's one of the ways it's used. Be ye wise as serpents, right? Doesn't that leap out of your mind? Be wise as serpents. A prudent man, a man who's wise as a serpent, deals with knowledge. Why? Hey, isn't that funny? Because what did the serpent offer us? Oh, knowledge. That's right. That was what it was. Knowledge. Okay. Yeah, the serpent was saying, "Come, take knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil." Not that there isn't good knowledge. Knowledge of good and evil is a particular kind of knowledge. You know what I mean? But part of it's a lie, part of it's the truth. Satan often deals in half-truths, right? Because in having the knowledge of good and evil, it does make us more like God. But it also takes us further from God, in that in knowing good and evil, it leads us to sin and then to die, which God does not do, neither sin nor die. Though the person of Christ, and as a man incarnate, he did die, but was raised again. As it is written, death was not able to hold him, nor could it, because he is the ever-living, the everlasting, from everlasting to everlasting, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So every prudent man deal with knowledge, but a fool lays open, he spreads it out. Like I said, well, I don't want to make too much about the spreading out. The idea of he lays it out, right? He lays it out, lays it open, which also can be metaphorically seen as a destructive kind of act, right? Because ideally, you'd want folly contained, right? Maybe not. Maybe you get too much folly in one place, it becomes explosive. Because I was thinking of, he makes knowledge, he puts it together, he makes it, and when you put ideas together, putting things together is an idea of understanding and wisdom. You take one idea and another idea, you put it together, and you come up with a new idea. But fools, they just spread folly all over the place in an unconstructive way. It doesn't... Oh, good, I can actually close the ads. It can actually... I had a pop-up ad come up. Oh, I have the Bible collection there, because I think we're going right back. Not the Bible collection, Bible Hub. Let's see. Fool, folly. Fool is Nabal. No, that's a different one. I was thinking the ball. All right, here we go. These are the words. We have Kasil, which is a stupid fellow, a dullard, or a fool. 3684 in the Strong's Concordance. Then Ivaleth is the folly. And it says one definition here from the Strong's Concordance as the main definition. But folly or silliness, whatever. And they aren't related directly to each other like the word fool and folly. You know, because folly, well, I think they're related, right? And let's see, this word, the stupid, the senseless, fool. What does it come from? Properly fat, that is figuratively stupid or silly. And fat again can mean like filled up. Kasal, from kasal, I wonder what it means. Fat, filled up, to be or become stupid. And I wonder if it means that in the sense that I understand they have stupidity as being put into a stupor. Figuratively silly. Yeah. Properly to be fat, that is figuratively silly. That's interesting that would be built into the language that deeply. That fat is silly or funny, or I don't know. Not sure what to make of that. Anyways. But it's metaphorically constructed anyways. A fool layeth open his folly. The stupid things he does are spread around, which can be damaging. That's the point. It's like that is laid open, and it's a fool is in that way is a dangerous individual. All right, on to the next one. A wicked messenger falleth into mischief, but a faithful ambassador is health. That's a good example of a metaphor, right? And I should have mentioned that when we said, it is a tree of life of, when the desire cometh. It's a good example of metaphor. Obviously, when you don't say it is like health, it does. Is it lit? But what it means is that when you do, when certain things happen, they convey a benefit. Now, in this case, obviously, a faithful ambassador's health. What is it? A wicked messenger falleth into mischief. I think it means into doing mischief. I don't think it necessarily means like it could, there's a common biblical, where it talks about the wicked are fallen into the snare they laid for the righteous, And you could think that the wicked messenger falls into mischief because he deserves it, right? Because he's wicked. And the faithful ambassador has health because, but I don't think that's what it's trying to say. In fact, I want to just double check. Let's just look at another translation where they're doing a little more interpretive dancing with the words. I'm just kidding with the dancing. Okay, let's try the NIV. Satan's own. Just kidding, just kidding. A wicked messenger falls into trouble, but a trustworthy envoy brings healing. That's a good... I like the way they put it there. Because now you think about it, what is the person of the messenger? I mean, what is the purpose of sending a messenger? What is the purpose of sending an ambassador, right? An envoy. Because when it puts it like that, I'm like, okay, the person you send as a messenger between two parties that are in dispute or something, a wicked messenger is going to get himself into trouble and is going to make trouble for everybody just because fools are always exposing their folly, laying them abroad unless they have exposed. Prudent enough knowledge, the fools expose their folly. They don't. I guess. Oh, I didn't bring over the thing. Sorry, I thought you were seeing what I saw. Of course, some people are just listening. So they have a wicked messenger falls into trouble there, right? But a trustworthy envoy brings healing. So it's the idea of that more the effect of having someone acting as a messenger. Honestly, as I think about this, I can't help. At first you think like, okay, in my personal life, it's like, yeah, but I look at this as very political. Solomon was a king. And so I think about this. In our State Department, we have these same people in the American government who keep failing at diplomacy over and over again because they're wicked, warmongering, disgusting. I shouldn't read. Well, whatever. They're disgusting. Abominations. Abominable people going around the world talking about democracy, but then dictating to countries who they get to put into power, provoking wars. The war in Ukraine is entirely the product of our diplomacy. It is. If you haven't paid attention for a long time, a long time ago, in the 90s, we promised the Russians we wouldn't move NATO a foot east of Germany or whatever. And we've moved it 1,000 miles. And all the while, our diplomats, who are unelected people who we have not told, hey, provoke a war with Russia in 30 years. Take 20 years or however long you need to get to war with Russia, please. So the diplomatic corps went out like fools, wicked messengers going around plotting to expand a military alliance to the very borders of the country that had given up their empire and their military alliance so that people could be free and we could have the end of history we dreamed of. But the wicked messengers wouldn't have it. And that's our diplomacy and the diplomatic corps. They should all be fired. And perhaps, I don't know, they have wrecked the empire that they were charged to take care of. And they've wrecked it. And now it will fall apart and crumble. We should have folded it back, but now it's going to be beaten back. It's going to be beaten back. And God help us. I remember when they talked about, I forgot which Secretary of State, he almost resigned because they were going to try to expand NATO. Their military alliance. It's like, then we go into Ukraine and overthrow their government in 2014. And now our Victoria Nuland is deciding who the next ruler is going to be. Who the next this is going to be. Our ambassadors. They're falling into trouble. Our wicked messengers are falling into trouble. And they'll be lucky if they don't get caught in some country. They'll be lucky. Somebody doesn't take them. And God help us all for what they've done. Really. World War III. Fools. Getting into trouble. Children playing at adults. All our ambassadors are complete failures. All they've done is brought us war. That's not the point of a freaking ambassador. The point of an ambassador is not to be other countries would not be remiss in regarding our ambassadors as spies and subversives. It's absolutely obscene. Obscene. Solomon knew about these things. Wicked messengers. They used to know how to deal with those sort of things. We need laws to deal with that. I do think so. We need strong laws to govern the actions of government officials so that when they engage in certain kinds of activities, they be held responsible at a level commensurate with the wickedness of the crime they have committed. According to tradition and understanding of these things. How wicked is this? How wicked is it? Next verse. Poverty. I love not being a 501c3. Isn't that lovely, not being any kind of charity? I can just say what I want. I'm a church, I need to be tax-free. Blah, 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 blah. I admire that one pastor who said, well, then I won't, then I'll give up my tax-free. Let's start paying taxes. Ooh. Ooh. It's like Jesus did it. Give to Caesar what is Caesar. We thought this country belonged to us. You know what I mean? So churches don't get taxed in America. Well, in Rome, they do. In Rome, they do. Get used to it. Stop being such weak Christians. Like I said, I remember someone saying, I wonder what Romans would think of modern people. I would wonder what Romans would think of modern Christians. That's what I'd love to hear. They would be disgusted. They would think of Christians are these like they stand proudly as the lions attack them and unflinchingly into the maw of death, who do not give up their faith and meet into, they're like invincible, unstoppable. Now they're all just waiting for a rapture. I'm not waiting for a rapture. I'm not waiting for anything. I'm waiting for my Lord, but I'm not waiting for him either. I'm busy doing his work. I'm not sitting around waiting for the Lord. I'm waiting on him in that sense. Yes, I am waiting on the Lord. Patiently waiting and looking to his coming. But not waiting for him to come for me to do something. Okay, poverty and shame shall be to him that refuseth instruction. But he that regardeth reproof shall be honored. I like the way they made that health, by the way, not into a metaphor. Because that actually helped me understand. Because I do think it is a metaphor. But because you don't have healing between nations, of course, metaphorical healing between nations. Yes. Poverty and shame. I wonder if messenger is the Hebrew word for angel. Let's look at that real quick, just as a curiosity. Is it malek? I believe is the word, right? Malak or something like that. It's very close to king or something. Maybe I got it wrong. For just messenger. Oh, we gotta go back to the King James. And look at messenger. Yes, malak. This is word also is messenger. It means angel also. Because an angel is a messenger. It's contextual. And then the one that was translated envoy or ambassador. It says it's ambassador. We're not going to look it up in King James. We're going to just go on. Okay. So we had poverty and shame shall be to him that refuseth instruction. He regardeth reproof shall be honored. If you take, correction. Sometimes it's hard. Human beings have pride. That's why it is important as a father, if you want, because you're chiefly we are chiefly responsible for the reproof. It is a father's instruction. It is a father's reproof. It is a mother's instruction also, but it is the father is primarily the one who's going to bear the rod and bear the reproof also. I mean, my wife, when she wants to reprove the children, generally invokes me, your father. It's like that immediately goes right to me. And so, when she needs to. I mean, our children are very well behaved at this point. Like I said, early on, if you have a lot of children, once you establish a good first 3 or so, 4, especially the eldest, and the second one and the third one, getting them all into line, as they all line up and understand how the structure works, and more come along. It is they help you enforce the rules, because they become every much as invested in the system as you do, especially since it's hierarchical, and the oldest, they are in charge over the younger ones, but also responsible and held responsible. My eldest was probably ultimately spanked more than anybody. He took more correction than anybody. And I'll say for his part, as humble as anybody, maybe more from that. Not in a not in a beat down, certainly not at all. That's what I said, because I didn't provoke them to wrath, and nor, even God forbid, like I don't know what kind of father wants to crush his children so that they become so. I mean, like there are a couple of ways you can make someone resentful, or you can completely crush them, which is unthinkable to me. But there's that. I mean, in a sense, in the moment of authority, you have to be crushingly authoritarian over your children. As far as like your authority is absolute. I don't, I may give them some choices, but don't give them too many choices. It's like it creates an illusion. Most of if you have an outcome you want, don't ever give them a choice. That's just a little bit of advice. I had a thought to do it that, and people even wanted me to do it, and maybe soon later I will talk more about family life in maybe a separate channel or something like that. But here it's kind of definitely part of the Proverbs, right? Because when I think about this, I think about things I want to give to my kids. I want my kids not to have poverty and shame. I mean, it's like I said, I've lived in poverty, but that's a knowing exchange. I have other riches. And like I say, it's not like, poverty. It's like, well, I own this house. Actually, the bank owns the house, right? But I have a mortgage on the house, and I have a significant amount of equity, whatever. Right? I hope to correct. It's like, but it's not like I have nothing. I've been here a while, so I have significant equity. That's not like I'm certainly not rich, but I am. I live a life. I've said, my income level is poverty, right? But when I think of poverty, I think of actual want. Like if I don't have actual want, like if I have to struggle with my weight, you know what I mean? If for me a weight problem is a problem I have, then I don't think I actually have poverty. Whenever I talk about I literally only mean in America. I say I struggle to pay my bills. Well, that doesn't stop me from buying quality groceries. No matter, they are expensive, but I buy quality groceries for my family. You know what I mean? And I haven't cut back on that yet. I haven't had to. I haven't been forced to. I don't know if at some point you have no choice. I'd cut back on something else. I don't know what. But I don't buy the cheapest, junkiest food because I'm not that poor. American poverty looks a lot different than real poverty. And we have real poverty in America, no doubt. But they're not people like me living, like I said, when you look at someone who has a lot of kids and the amount of money they make, it's like, well, they're struggling for sure in this economy, in this world we live in. It's not easy to live on, $40,000 or $50,000 with one income in this day and age. It's a complete struggle. But, we're surviving. It's all right, So I'm not ashamed of because my poverty isn't shameful. That's why. It's not like I'm on the street begging. If I was, then maybe I think I was. Look, the computer screen turned on behind me. That's weird. Or hasn't it been on all? I thought I saw a square there earlier. Anyways, so, yeah. If that's something you're worried about, poverty, I suppose. Like in the sense of, I'm not ashamed of being unrich. I'm not ashamed of the comparison made to my neighbor. I would only be ashamed if I am only ashamed to the degree I need to go begging from my neighbor. If I got to go asking for help. Yeah, that does make shame, right? But again, this is not derived from merely being poor. What it's saying is, if you refuse instruction, you will have poverty and shame. So I've never had true poverty. To me, true poverty would be they took the house and we got thrown out. And now I'm living in an apartment, barely holding on there. I guess, or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, it's not like I don't have other properties also. I guess as a I have to reflect on that, because as a impoverished person, quote unquote, at least according to our scale, I remember when I had 6 kids or something like that, or I remember looking at the thing like a family of 6 making $75,000. A family of 8 with 6 kids making $75,000 or something like that. That was poverty. And I was like, man, if I could make $75,000. I'm like, I don't think I'd consider that poverty at all. I'd get along a lot better. Yeah, especially back then. Holy moly. I would have considered myself downright rich. So I think the standards are all jacked up. You know, I always talk about that. Understand, whenever I talk about myself being in poverty, I mean it with a bit of a joke, because I do think I make that clear. We're talking about American. You know what I mean? It's like in other countries, India's recently got their average income up to $2,000 a month, and they're living on that's pretty good living. You know, or whatever their median household income, or I forgot what it is. I remember someone was just talking about that, and their country is doing much better. That's poverty. That's what I mean. Like when you're country, you know, see how people do on much less. Obviously, a lot of things are inflated here. He that regardeth reproof shall be honored. Yeah, when you have, that's the point of not provoking your children to wrath, because when you make them angry in your mode of punishing them, that's what results in having children that become disobedient, and they become the type of people who, you know, like it says, they have the way of transgressors. They go into the way of transgressors, which is hard. And I assume that meant difficult. I'm gonna check it just in case, just lest it be said. I think this means difficult. It says the word is ethan, which means perennial, ever-flowing, or permanent. Which I think gives that figurative sense of difficulty. Yeah, and whatever. I didn't bring it up, but I looked at it. That's pretty much what it is. Back to where we were. But yeah, so, you know, I want my children to have an easier time in life, not have everything be stuck in the same place, you know, in the hard way, in the way of the transgressors. I want to have favor. I don't want to have continually be down in the dumps. I want my kids, when they go to places, when they go to work, they advance. When they go to an interview, they're giving a positive impression. Because they are prudent, they have knowledge, they know how to carry themselves, they have integrity. They're the kinds of people that people want to work with. That's what I mean. If that's what you want for them, you know, if you want your children to succeed, which is, I assume, the goal of correcting them, you know, them to succeed both with God and men, because they have to live in this world somehow, and they need to be favored in both ways. It's good to be favored both ways. Our Lord himself was favored both ways, so I seek the same for my children. Okay. Yeah, and like this is just because I've raised my children in poverty, that doesn't mean my whole life is destined to poverty. You know, like I said, I think I have the true riches. No, I do not feel poor. I mean, I feel it. I feel it. But I do not feel it deep down. Deep down, I do feel, well, do I feel rich? No, I don't. All I can think of is like all the songs I haven't written. All I can think of is all the works I haven't done. All I can think of is, Lord, I'm an unprofitable servant, for I haven't even measured up to what the measure you've already given me. That's all I can think, actually. But it doesn't get me down, because I was just thinking, like, well, it would get me down, actually. It would get me down, except I think, oh yeah, I was supposed to think like that. Because I don't think on the true riches that I have. I don't. My wife will tell you. I often am more focused on the immediate, and sometimes that's needful, because someone has to make sure and look after things. Not to the worry, but I don't know. But like it says, we have to be diligent in what we do. We have to do all things as unto the Lord, and not all things are unto the Lord. They're just as unto the Lord, right? And it's hard sometimes to do things that are, you know, it's like, I want to just sit around all day working on music. you know. And maybe that's what I should be doing. I don't know. Not to the exclusion of Bible studies. Maybe I should be sitting around all day doing Bible studies. Maybe I should be sitting around all day doing Bible studies and music, but I don't have time. I can't. Maybe someday I will. But even like I said, it's like, and I would point out that you don't want to feel too full in the Spirit. You don't want to feel too full, like, oh, I've got all the riches I need. I've got everything I need in Jesus. I'm all full. You know why happy are the poor in spirit? Because they are the ones who go after the kingdom of heaven. They're the ones who do not think they're, I just sit in church. I'm saved. I'm full. Everything's, I've got all that. That's why Jesus flipped that one. Happy are the poor in spirit. Happy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Yeah, hunger and thirst after righteous. You have to look for riches elsewhere and then be unsatisfied, in a sense. I do, because I feel like we have to understand that the Lord has come into our lives, but it's like we need more. It's like, yes, we are complete in Him, but I want to still keep that hunger until the day, shining brighter and brighter to the perfect day, till it actually is a reality. And I don't care if I spend my entire life vainly chasing that. That doesn't matter. Because in the end, it won't be in vain, because when He raises me up, I will have all that I sought after. I'm just going to not sit around foolishly acting like I don't think that's where I'm going. I do think that's where I'm going. So I want to get ready. He that walketh, the desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but it is abomination to fools to depart from evil. Oh, I remember that. Just when I was a teenager and just starting to be serious about studying the Bible, and I, was stopping things that I used to, running to the same rite of excess with some of my friends. Not all of them. Some of them, it was like that. They like, why would you stop? What? That's an about, to them it was like, why would you stop going out and getting party and getting drunk and all that? Why would, what you're just going to sit around reading the Bible? That's an abomination. That's weird, man. I would never do that. Sit around reading the Bible 4 to 6 hours a day? Studying it? Some old man or something like that? That's creepy, weird, disgusting, abominable. Yeah, what? You mean not fornicate? Not fornicate? Be filled with wine instead of the Spirit? Not run to the riot of excess? What do you mean, stop living? Were you kidding me? No. Get away from me, you weirdo. The desire. I think all these references to desire, man, they speak to me. Because when I received the Holy Spirit, it was like, Lord Jesus, grant me my heart's desire. Those were the words I whispered right before the power of God came over me. And since then, I've thought about the things I desired in God, like what my, the heart is. I didn't even know my heart. I told him to give me what was in my heart. That's kind of scary, but actually not, because actually when I think about what's in my heart, what is the deep desire of my heart, I'm like, wow, that's cool and scary, because what I desire in the Lord are good things, and but they're not easy things. Overcoming the flesh, overcoming the mind, overcoming life. The lust of the eyes. The flesh, the eyes, the life, the pride of life, as it's written. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, pride of life? I thought it was the desire of the eyes, the lust, whatever. There's other desires, right? But I spoke of my desires in the Lord. And the things desired, when you desire a good thing, like a good goal, and this goes not just for things in the Lord, but it most prominently to me when I think of the things I desired and desire yet, and how sweet they are, and it is to when and if they're accomplished. They're not all accomplished, but many of my desires in the Lord have been accomplished. But small thing, small works I wanted to do, ways in which I wanted to change myself, ways in which, the very fact of him answering me on that day, almost 20, it was 18 years ago. Well, I guess this year, it'll be 19 years ago. This will be the 19th anniversary in March for me, when I received God's Spirit. And then that kernel of that idea, that my desire in him, yes, he said, yes, I will give you. And Jesus himself said, you will ask what you will, and it shall be done to you. I'm like, because all the things I want, and the only way that happens is what I want is what he also wants. And if that's true, then he put that in me, that desire for those good things. And when you accomplish the good things that God has put in you to do, like I said, there's nothing so peace-inducing for me as knowing I'm doing God's will. I never feel so out of sorts as when I'm not sure what God wants of me. Because usually it's pretty obvious, but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly. It's okay, yeah, no problem, Lord. I mean, I agree. That's what no problem means. You will have no dispute from me. These things I also agree there too. I will, to my utmost, do as you require. But there are deeper things, and in accomplishing them, the victory is sweet. But the fools, they don't want to, departing from evil to them is like, I don't want to do it. Evil, they love the things they revel in. I don't know, I discovered it was kind of empty, I thought. But maybe that's because that's the way the Lord makes us. Some people, maybe they don't discover how empty it is, and they just keep doing it because it's not just empty. There is it's an empty pleasure. It's kind of like empty calories. That doesn't it has an effect. Oh yeah, it has a way of filling you up, but it has a way of not healing you. You can eat candy bars and stuff like that, right? You can eat food that is not healthy for you, processed food and all this stuff that is not really nourishing to the body. And what happens is you'll eat it and it'll fill you, but you will never be nourished. That's why people are so hungry. That's why they get so fat, because the foods they're eating are not nutritional. So your body keeps craving more and more nutrition, which is what you really need. You really need actual nutrition in your body, which comes from eating a variety of different natural foods. Or just a whole animal, all right? Just to be quite frank. Guts and all. That's why we eat other things. And that's not biblical, that's just my opinion. As far as that eating. But as far as, I do think it's true of the spirit, there's a nutrition we really need. And there's an emptiness that we can have. And like I said, I do think that that's true of why obesity is a new epidemic that has something to do with I don't know what. Because we used to have plenty of food. I don't think people are just suddenly becoming piggish. It's just if you're constantly hungry, you want to eat. I notice when I eat better food, I'm not as hungry. And I don't eat as much. And that's part of the problem. They keep craving, so you can get addicted to all kinds of iniquity and sin. And it seems like, well, I can't stop eating all this abomination, whether it be of food or of sexual sins or whatever. I can't stop filling myself with these things. It becomes like an addiction. Even though it hurts them. Even though their life is falling apart. Right? Sexual sins ruining their lives. Incontinence, drunkenness, ruining their lives. But the thought of stopping it, and that, I tell you what, if you have a problem with that, and you don't think it's an abomination to stop, that's good. You're not a fool. You're just struggling in captivity. There's a sin that's lingering and pulling at you, and that's a different thing. We're not fools. We desire good things. That's why, the Lord blessed me, because I came there desiring good things. I was like, I want to be delivered from pornography. I want to be delivered from drugs and alcohol. I want to be delivered from all the sins that so easily beset me round about. I wanted to depart from evil. And the Lord blesses those things. I can't believe we're an hour in. I'm finishing this chapter. I don't care if I got to go an hour and a half. Sorry. I guess I do have to care, don't I? All right, well, whatever. Let's go a little while longer. He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. This is a very common thing to understand. The company you keep does affect your behavior. This is what it says in the New Testament. Good company, a bad company corrupts good manners in the King James, which means manners is behavior. Bad company corrupts your good behavior. And it's true. You keep hanging out around with the wrong people. That was one of the things I very intelligently did, is I stopped running with my old friends. And I found a girl who I got married to, and I spent all my time with her, and we would study the Bible together and go study the Bible with other people, and then we'd study the Bible on our own, and then we'd start having children. And then, and there was writing music and playing music and raising children and working and that. Not a lot of time for nonsense. I spent more time in bars before I turned 21. I got married. I was 21 when I was married. I spent more time before I got married in bars, before I turned 21, I should say. Well, before I got married, than I ever did after. I think once or twice, just to go watch a basketball game with people. And I still had a drinking problem back then, so whatever. I was drunk too. But the point was, if you got problems drinking, if you got a lot of times people have a lot of problems, right? You got to get a handle on things. And, I remember I had a buddy and he had a lot of problems and he was worried about this and that. And I'm like, well, this is the one. I was looking at a situation. I didn't ask him because I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I'm just a friend who gives advice. I don't try to draw it out of them. I just take an idea, I judge it, and I'm like, hey, here's what you do. I'm not, because a therapist doesn't do that. But I am more of a counselor in that sense, as far as when a friend comes to me. I give counsel, not therapy. I don't try to help them get in touch with themselves. No, but it's like, what should I do? Well, I want to remember what that example was. But walking with fools shall be destroyed. Walking with wise men should be wise. Yeah. I forgot what the exact example was. Well, whatever. It's very simple. If you have if you have a lot of problems, well, my friend, it was like, well, go work out, because that's actually the easiest thing. You have a lot of problems. And actually the easiest one for you, and the one that I can tell you can control, is your body image. You feel out of shape. No, he wasn't that out of shape, but he felt like, you can fix that. And he did. And so when I was young, when I first got married, I couldn't fix all my problems, right? I couldn't necessarily, I didn't know how to get free. I didn't even really realize, when I got married, I didn't realize I had I didn't realize how deep I would call it my masturbation problem was, actually, more than a pornography problem. Because at the time, I didn't realize I had a pornography problem. It was more, whatever. Point is, I didn't realize, there were drugs and alcohol problems and other things, right? I didn't need to compound all that by running around with fools. I hung around with my wife, who prayed for me and who encouraged me and who tried to edify me in the good thing. You know, I walked with the wise men. And even though I didn't have, I wasn't perfect, and neither are they or she. I'm not trying to hide the ball here. Even though we're not perfectly wise, either of us, and we both have issues, we make ourselves companions of those who fear God and who turn from sin and who love the Lord Jesus and for whom these things are the most important things. When you're walking with people like that, you know, it's like that. Now you can work those other things, the sins that are besetting you, they become targets for elimination. Whereas when you're walking with fools, you're the target for elimination. Righteousness is the target for elimination. Your desire not to, you know, like you're hanging around with them and it's like they're all the drinker. You know, like I don't know any young person I wouldn't like to rescue from a situation where they're just hanging around with a bunch of people and they're the designated sober guy all the time. You know, I mean, or not maybe designated, but like they're just, oh, I don't drink, but all they're going out to the places where people do. I don't recommend it. You know, they wonder why you don't run to the same riot of excess. Well, if you keep running with them, you will. It's not that I never saw my friends. Like I said, I would call my old friends on an afternoon and say, like, hey, you want to go play some basketball? And we go play basketball. And that's a perfectly fine thing to do with your old friends. And, like, be busy. And they're like, well, I'm home tonight with my wife. You know, they never were like, like I said, they were like, hey, you know, that's what Paul does. You know, I was always doing my own thing. I was never known as like the Paul, the crowd, the one, whatever, the crowd follower. Yes. But the danger is, if you're too much isolated, you don't fall into either category, and you know, an isolated person can also be a fool. In the multitude of counsel, there's wisdom and safety, as it says. Safety, I believe, is the word used there operatively. Because you want to be able to listen to a lot of different information. It doesn't mean the number of counselors. Like, it doesn't matter if you have 50 people who all say the same thing. I mean, that might be, you know, it depends on whether they're not letting the 10 others who disagree have a word edgewise. You know? And also, what is who are these people? The 50 men, 50 doctors agree. You know, Camel cigarettes are better than others. They're more healthy for you. Right? You know, they used to have 3 out of 5 doctors smoke Camel or whatever. Sorry, this is just, I guess you're allowed to blaspheme them, aren't they? That's just an example of old advertising. I don't know if that brand in particular was the offending brand. Yeah. I'm not going to push this further, I guess. We'll, yeah. Boy, man, that's okay. I kind of wished I'd gotten ahead farther just because, whatever. I don't want, just because we talked about a lot of these subjects, like the rod. He that spares the rod hates his son. We already talked about that. So, like I said the theme is kind of it does feel like and a lot of the Proverbs do feel like this. Like, if you take wisdom, this is my conclusion. When we take wisdom to heart and we apply it to our lives, as your life goes on, you become an adult and then a parent. You see the point. What is the point of having children? It's like, well, you want, like Paul says, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. Well, the first part, you want to leave a legacy. So that, if I leave behind me stuff that goes down to my grandchildren, what can they build on that? That's the idea, is that you are building something. To me, it's not just, yes, there may be some sort of wealth or some sort of inheritance, piece of property, whatever. That's good. It is good to leave an inheritance. And that, what is that? It is not like, and again, it's a weird thing because we talk about, right, building barns to store more and more and not using your money for good. But, like I said, I use my money for good. That doesn't mean I'm buying this house and I got to take a reverse mortgage right now and start distributing the money. Like owning a piece of property is not itself like, oh, well, here's the thing. Sometimes you do sell your piece of property, right? Jesus, Ananias and Sapphira were slain for holding back what they said they gave, right? So sometimes you do sell all and follow him. But it's not, there's a time for every purpose set for under heaven, and there's a time to liquidate, and there's a time to build and plant and leave for the future. And also part of the reason you're leaving for the future, a lot, I hear it on the news all the time about how baby boomers burn through their inheritances and leave nothing for their kids because they're living, they've retired early so they can live this opulent lifestyle that they've told themselves all the time they want. I never plan on retiring. Retiring to what? I want to, if you stop moving, you start dying, as far as I'm concerned. I want to keep living. I mean, live life. I want to be doing things that are, give vigor to my bones and that, what was it? Something to my, and give, I was going to say alacrity, nimbleness to, and promote nimbleness of mind. Okay. Maybe my mind isn't quite as nimble as it could be, but we're struggling for words here. Okay. So a good man, and so that's what a good man does. He does think of the generations to come, and not just a literal inheritance. Also, as Christians, I think in terms of the spiritual inheritance, as far as what kind of Christian cultural, because it is not just, a religion is a cultural type of a thing. It's how we practice our religion, and when I look at the Old Testament, the primary, teach it to your children and to your children's children, bind them on your arms, bind them on your forehead for a sign. The covenant and the words of God are supposed to be this primal thing in our life. And I want to convey that to my children in a way that is both gentle and sure. Because like I said, it's like you go too hard at things. Sometimes you get that resistance. You get that, what do they call it? It's, repression. When you repress something too hard, right? It comes back sometimes. Like for me, a good example is, I wasn't ever allowed to watch certain kinds of shows when I was a kid. And so later on that became an intense temptation. Sort of. I think I'm using, the reason I didn't mention it, because the example is so silly because it's a children's cartoon, which I wasn't allowed to watch. But later on, like, my favorite movie is that children's cartoon. But other things too, like, forbidden things. Everyone understands this. That oftentimes when you forbid something strongly, it becomes an object of temptation. That's why, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, I've often said that's quite a setup. Because it is forbidden and it is tempting. And the serpent there to make it even more so by giving voice to the temptation. Okay, and I want to keep going just slightly because I notice I moved the space. Evil pursueth sinners, but to the righteous good shall be repaid. That is that's a restatement of the good old, what do you call it? The wages of sin is death. But the gift of God is life through Jesus Christ our Lord. We get good back. And of course, the righteousness we have, I have to reiterate, is the righteousness of Christ, right? That's how we are regarded as the righteous. But as a Christian, that doesn't mean we shouldn't give heed to these things as like what righteousness is and how to perform it, because we don't want to live in hypocrisy as Christians. Though it's possible to do that and still be a Christian. Well, it's possible to do a sin and not be a hypocrite, because, like here, I don't think I put on airs about being more holy than others. I openly discuss my struggles, to hopefully not to such a degree that it becomes boorish, but to the degree that you understand that I am not holier than you. I don't stand alone in some ways. I am just like other men. It may sound weird and almost like, Paul, you don't need to say that. We know, right? But the Apostle Paul said that. You understand? And people still act as though, well, the apostles and prophets, they weren't like us. They were different. They stand alone. They were holier than us. The saints, they stand alone. They're different. They're holier than us. They're not normal men. What? No. You're wrong. You're wrong. They're just like us. They're no different. They're just like me. You know, you look at me, you look at a saint. You look at me, you're looking at an apostle, a prophet. There's no different. I mean, as far as like, they weren't better men per se. I mean, we're all better and more, but from God's perspective, it wasn't like he chose from among the best and the brightest necessarily. So evil pursueth sinners. Those who insist on doing evil, which is sin, who miss the mark of what is right and not performing that which we ought to do. The consequences of that, of course, it's as though they chase you. You know, it is in pursuit. And the ultimate evil, death. That's why I say the wages of sin is death. Evil pursues you. It's just another different kind of metaphor. It's wages. Oh, it's chasing you. Oh, it's lying at the door. You know. But to the righteous, good shall be repaid. The gift of God is life eternal. Now, we're not righteous enough to get. If we could be righteous, we would get good from God. That's why this guy, some Jungian guy, this guy was into Carl Jung. And he says, you need to read Jung and The Shadow. And you don't understand why you should never tell someone God's going to judge them. And I'm like, oh, you misunderstand me. Because I was talking about God judging every man by their conscience. He thought I meant condemn. Oh, I do not mean condemn. God, if you stand before God with a clean conscience, God will in no case condemn you. Okay? Good luck with that one, okay? Good luck with that one. He says, oh, my conscience is clear. Okay. I don't need Jesus. All right. Maybe he'll find that amusing and have mercy on you. You know, I'm not saying God's going to condemn you. I don't know. I wouldn't expect him to accept me on that basis, but you know, I don't judge other men's servants. But of course you're saying you're not his servant, but I'm his servant. So if you were a Christian, I'd probably feel better about it. But yeah, you go ahead and stand on your own merit and you see how that does for you. Maybe he'll find that amusing. That's the best I can do. It's like, I don't know. Maybe they'll make him say, oh, that's cute. Especially if you haven't done any great evil, I could see, you know, maybe. If you feel like you dealt with it, you know, you feel like, here's the thing. Someone tells me that, it's like, oh, you're not far from the kingdom. You're conscious. You feel like, you're like Cornelius. I want to do what's right. I've converted my shadow to be positive. The shadow side, I know all about that stuff. I mean, not all about it, but I understand. I understand the shadow side. Are you kidding me? Has anyone ever listened to me teach? Okay. We're going to finish this chapter because we've already finished it. Verse 23, as much food is in the tillage of the poor, but that is destroyed for want of judgment. No, actually, you know what? We're not going to start there because you know what we're going to do? Tomorrow, we're going to look at verse 23. Probably not say much about 24 because I'll say at the time, we talked about 24 at the beginning of the last study because we did. And I'll say a brief word on it and try to move on as quickly as possible. I thought the last verse also we could cover briefly, but verse 23, I feel like, okay, I need to think about that. We're basically going to briefly cover that, and we'll go on to chapter 14. And in fact, what I'm going to do, and I'm sorry for anyone who watched this far looking for me to go into verse 23. 23, I'm just going to cover in chapter 14, and probably, yeah, we're going to consider the rest of this kind of covered. 25, we haven't said anything specific about it, but it's a pretty basic proverb. The righteous eateth to the satisfying of his soul, meaning all the works he does, all the fruit he gets, it's satisfying. Right down to his very soul, right? But the wicked, his belly shall want. You know, he's never full. Never, I get it. You know, good things truly satisfy. Like I was saying about nutrition. When you take in things that do not really feed you, do not really give you what your soul needs, when you take in wickedness, sin, abominations, the world, you know, filling your head with the things of the world and the things of the world, you know, if you find yourself struggling, it's like, well, maybe you got your head too much in the world. I don't know. I mean, what I mean by the world, I don't mean the world like what's going on in the world necessarily. Though that can be too much of a distraction too. I know sometimes for me it is. I mean the world like, yeah, what's going on in the world, but especially like the vain things of the world, the empty things, the things that don't mean anything. It's so fine to not be troubled at wars and rumors of wars. I'm not. Well, I'm not troubled in the sense of like the end is here. I'm not troubled like that, no. Certainly. Because the end is like, well, not yet. Anyways. So, much food is the tillage of the poor. Okay, yeah. So we'll cover verse 23. I'm just going to kind of set it out like that. And we've got it all there. So we've covered verse 25, 24. We're just going to cover 23 tomorrow. But we're going to really start at chapter 14, okay? So thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And I just love that verse from Revelation. And I realize I don't have my music here anymore, so let's see. There we go. Now let's do it different.
Thou meetest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness, those that remember thee in thy ways. Behold, thou art wroth, for we have sinned. In those is continuance, and we shall be saved. But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness are as filthy rags, and we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like wind have taken us away.